today we are going to discuss this chapter 6. The name of the chapter is Dhyana Yoga. Dhyana Yoga, meditation, yoga. This is being practiced by people not only in India in different forms, but all over the world. People practice this kind of yoga. We'll have a discussion on Dhyana Yoga today. So Dhyana Yoga, briefly, it talks about eightfold yoga system, starting with Yam, Niyam, Dhyan, Pranayam, Pratyahar, Dharana, Samadhi and all that. So we expect that we'll be able to finish this chapter 6 in about 3 to 4 sessions. And today's session is divided into 4 parts, beginning with what are the essential qualifications of a yogi. Then we'll talk about how our mind can be a friend and how our mind can be an enemy as well. And then we'll talk about the principle of duality, how we should remain in equilibrium when we come across this principle of duality in our day-to-day life, because this whole world is full of dualities. And the last thing, we'll talk about a brief discussion on the eightfold yoga system being mentioned by Lord Krishna in this chapter 6 of Bhagavad Gita. So we are reciting Shloka 6.1. Shri Bhagwan Uvacha Anashrita Karma Phalam Karya Karma Karoti Ya Sa Sannyasi Cha Yogi Cha Na Niragnir Na Chakriya. Meaning, by Srila Prabhupada, the Supreme Personality of Godhead said, one who is unattached to the fruits of his work and who works as he is obligated is in the renounced order of life. And he is the true mystic, not he who lights no fire and performs no duty. So here the reference is being given about who is basically a mystic or who is a yogi. So we'll be discussing Shloka 1 and 2 now. So here one word has been used. The important word is karyam. Karyam means performance of karya or the duty. Now the duty can be divided in 2 parts. One can be the real duty and other can be illusory duty. The real duty means when we serve the reality, and the illusory duty can be a duty when we do not serve the reality but we serve the illusion, or you can call it as Maya. Real duty means when we serve Supreme Personality of Godhead, because ultimately service is an essential ingredient or an element of every one of us life. We all serve at some or other phase of our life. Even the biggest prime minister of the world or of the country, they all serve. So every one of us are simply busy in serving. Some people are serving in their family, some people are serving in society, some people are serving at a city level, some people are serving at the country level. So essentially, we all are serving. No one can escape this principle of service. So to serve reality means to serve the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So now, as we were discussing earlier also in chapter 5, when Arjuna had raised this question, sannyas, what about sannyas, and what about performance of duties? And then Krishna is continuing that discussion here as well. Krishna is telling one who is unattached to the fruits of the results, and he performs his duty as he is obligated to perform in this world. So he is doing all the actions, he is performing all the duties that comes across on his or her way, but he is not attached to it. And in his definition of a true mystic, he's saying he is a true mystic, not the one who is just renouncing everything. And we'll talk more about what the renunciation is. So karya means performance of a duty. Then, so who understands that ultimately service of the Supreme Personality of Godhead or service of the Lord is my real duty. He is in the perfect knowledge. When he is in the perfect knowledge, then he understands what is the meaning of real sannyas. Sa sannyasi cha yogi cha. And when we say he is a sannyasi also, he is a yogi also. And when we say yogi or yoga, the word yoga that we have been discussing, karma yoga, jnana yoga, dhyana yoga, we have been discussing all these different kinds of yoga. One of the most important thing that we should understand when it comes to yoga, yoga means connection. And connection with what? Connection with Supreme Personality of Godhead. So linking oneself with Supreme Personality of Godhead is yoga. So whether we talk about dhyana yoga, or we talk about karma yoga, or we talk about jnana yoga, and we talk about bhakti yoga, the aim of all these yoga practices should be to link one's consciousness with Supreme Personality of Godhead. Okay, so another thing in Shloka 2, if you look at, in Shloka 2, there's so, O son of Pandu, for one never becomes a yogi unless he renounces his desire for sense gratification. So this is one of the qualification of yogi that's being mentioned, that if we are practicing the path of yoga system, any yoga system, we have to renounce this desire for enjoying this material world, the desire to enjoy through our own senses, keeping Krishna or God aside. If we do that, then we cannot practice any yoga system. So this is the first qualification of a yogi. And Srila Prabhupada mentions in this regard, he gives an interesting example of Prahlad Maharaj. When Lord Nrsimhadev killed Hiranyakashipu, then he offered the benediction to Prahlad Maharaj. And he asked for a boon, like, whatever you want, ask me. Then Prahlad Maharaj said that, I am not here for any business. I just want to do service to you. I am here to do uninterrupted service unto your lotus feet. I am not here for any business. So he performed this devotional service not to gain any material benefit or to fulfill the material desires. So the true yogi must practice anything not for the sake of fulfilling his or her own personal desires, but for satisfying or fulfilling the desires of Supreme Personality of Godhead. He is a true yogi. So sannyasi, yogi, there is no difference. And Krishna is mentioning here, the true sannyasi or the true yogi is one who basically performs the duties, whatever he is obligated to perform, because he has this body, and within the body he has some duties to perform. When he is performing those duties, he understands that I am supposed to perform the duty, but I am not supposed to be attached to the results of the duties that I perform within this body. And he is a true yogi. So this is the first learning of the day, that who is a true yogi, we understand from this shloka 1 and 2. Now let us move on to shloka 5 and 6. 3 and 4 I am skipping. So 5 and 6 is the real theme of the day. That, we all have a mind. The mind can be a friend also, and the same mind can be an enemy also. And we will discuss how it is so. So we all want to elevate in spiritual life. That is why you all are watching this Weekend Wisdom series. you attend different sessions, you attend Bhagavad Gita discourses, you want to know the meaning of life. So whosoever is interested in knowing about the meaning of life is the real seeker, and definitely it is expected that he is looking forward to excel or looking forward to elevate on the path of spiritual life. So the elevation in spiritual life is only possible with the help of mind. If we do not take a proper charge of our mind, then there is no scope of elevation. So mind is, what is mind? Mind is acting as a driver, and this body is like a car, and the driver is sitting in the car, and whatever the driver dictates, the car moves in that direction. So like we have our mind. If our mind dictates, okay, let's go to enjoy in this club today, then through our body we moves in that direction. And then another possibility can be, okay, let's go and participate in some sort of spiritual activity, maybe visit to the temple, or meet devotees, visit their house, understand the philosophy of Bhagavad Gita. So this is another proposition. So these are the two different propositions that we can observe in the society today. So mind is directing the body, and accordingly the body is taking action. So that's why mind is being referred as driver, and the body is being referred as like the car or the chariot. Okay, so what is the yoga system? So yoga system is that the principle of yoga system is designed in a manner that our mind is being controlled, and it is controlled in a manner that it acts as our friend and not as our enemy. For that, our mind needs to be a little strong. We need to regulate our mind. If our mind is not regulated, then it will act as our enemy, and it can create a big problem for us. But if we know the art of regulating or controlling our mind, then it will work in a favorable direction for us. We'll discuss that in successive sessions, how it works. So let us briefly understand how this works. So at the top there is a soul, but soul is acting. Soul is not acting in reality. Soul is like a dormant, though it is the most active component or ingredient within our body, but it is more or less dormant. Then below soul, there is an intelligence, then there is a mind, and then there are senses. Because soul is dormant, then most of the actions are being executed through mind. Now, if intelligence has a perfect knowledge, through the perfect knowledge, the intelligence have a control or a dominance over the mind, then mind will not do anything as its want, because ultimately it is intelligence that controls even over the mind. And then accordingly, senses are also being regulated, and senses also works in that direction on the basis of the indications that it receives from the mind. So soul is in the sleeping position, but if we practice, if we give proper training to our in the spiritual life, if we have proper training, then the outcome is that soul awakens. And once the soul is awakened, then the intelligence is under regulation, the mind is under regulation, and the senses are also under regulation. All of these three works under the regulation and control of the soul. So soul needs to awaken, and in order to awake that soul, we need to give some training to the soul. And the beginning of the training of the soul is through the mantra meditation. That's why we focus on this chanting of Hare Krishna Mahamantra. Through Hare Krishna Mahamantra, we awaken the soul. And once our soul is awakened, then everything comes under regulation. And that's how our mind becomes our friend. So if we train our mind in a proper direction, then the mind is friend and our life is successful. If our mind is not trained, then our mind is our enemy and our life is unsuccessful. So we need to give a proper training to the mind so that it acts as our friend and not as our enemy. All right. So how does that training happen? One of the method of training to the mind is through association. So there is a saying that a man is known by the company he has. So company is very essential. It's very critical element of our life. If we have a good company of people around us, then we always, excel in life in a positive direction. So if someone who is practicing the path of spirituality, if we are under association with that person, association not necessarily means physical association. It is an association on the platform of mind. Like if you are listening to the talk that I am delivering now, you are associating with me. So this is the association. This is how your mind is getting associated with my mind. And that my mind is trying to give the message of what Krishna is speaking in Bhagavad Gita. That's how we all get connected to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and gradually our mind gets trained. The more we listen, the more our mind becomes trained, and then it acts as our friend. It acts in the positive direction as our friend. So there is a second principle that we briefly discussed. So Shloka 5 and Shloka 6 are talking about mind being our friend and the mind being our enemy. Now we are talking about Shloka 7, 8 and 9. So theme of Shloka 7, 8 and 9 is on the principle of duality. So we know that everything in this world is governed by the principle of duality. So what is the duality? So there could be different examples of duality. If you refer Shloka 7, 8 and 9, it has that references. So like summer and winter. Right now we see too much cold here in Delhi. So it represents, like, we know about cold, we can understand the cold because there is too much heat. If there is not too much heat, we cannot understand what cold is, or we cannot appreciate or value heat. So both has to be there. Like that's the only way through which we make comparison. Then the second is happiness and distress. So unless and until there is no distress in life, we cannot experience or we cannot appreciate happiness. Then honor and dishonor, respect and disrespect, day and night. So these all are the examples of duality. Now, we all are encaged in this body. We all have this body. We all are encaged in this body. We have to get out of the bodily conception of life. We cannot leave the bodies. Definitely we cannot. But we can get rid of the bodily conception of life. For that, we need to learn to tolerate things in our life. Like, okay, when there's too much hot, let's tolerate. When there's too much cold, let's tolerate. So we have to give that training to the mind to tolerate it. It's like itching. When you have too much itching on your body, you cannot keep on itching. You have to tolerate that itching. You have to control. Otherwise, it will become a wound and it can create a big problem for you. Likewise, there are so many things that disturbs us. We have to learn to tolerate. the duality, and we have to ultimately transcend ourselves from this this life of duality. So material life, most of us live in this material world, and that means we all have a material life. This material life is based on the principle of sense gratification, and the spiritual life is based on the principle of the detachment from the tendency of gratifying our senses. This is it's like a contrast between a material life and a spiritual life. We all have to learn the art of detaching ourselves from this idea of enjoying in this material world. It is not easy. It is very difficult, but through training everything is possible. So training is essential. And then ultimately we have to learn this rule that it's all like a drama going on in the stage. So when we see in the drama, there are different roles being given, different characters are there. Somebody is playing the role of a hero, someone is playing the role of a enemy or a villain. Everyone is playing their respective role. Someone is father of someone is of mother of someone is wife, someone is a husband, someone has a child. All these relationships are there when there is a drama happening, but it's not reality. So our life is also like a drama happening on a stage. Let's not engross ourselves into that and understand everything is temporary. We have to ultimately train our mind so that we can get out of this dramatic life and we can enter into the real life of eternity, bliss and knowledge. How we can do it? Theory and practical aspect. We need to understand the difference between what is theory and what is practical. So theoretical knowledge is there in Bhagavad Gita in the form of this divine book that Lord Krishna spoke in the battlefield of Kurukshetra to Arjuna. So theoretical aspects we all can read, but we have to practically demonstrate it and live with it in our day-to-day life. If we do not practically demonstrate it and live with it, then it is of no value. So if someone is just busy in increasing the needs of the body, so if we are busy in increasing the needs of the body, the outcome would be that we are not practically, so the meaning is that we are not practically applying that knowledge. If we are in a true sense applying that knowledge in our day-to-day life, then that won't happen. Then we will not be in that trap of simply increasing the needs of the body. This is what the advancement of civilization is doing in today's society. Too much of show off and pampering, or show off and advertisement, media, everything is simply showing us buy things which may not be the need of the hour, and we simply become attached to them, and then artificially it becomes a necessity. Although it may not be a necessity, but it becomes a necessity because our society has forced us to think in that direction, that it is a necessity. And that's how we keep on rolling in that trap. The trap keeps on rolling us into this material world. We have to get rid of that. Okay, and so theoretical and practical demonstration, we can take an example when if someone is a science student, then he first studies the theoretical aspect of maybe chemistry, biology and physics, and then he do some practicals in the laboratory. The examinations are there are practical examination, the theoretical knowledge, both goes together. It's not just theory that okay, you understand hydrogen 2 and then oxygen, if you combine them together it becomes water. They do some practical experiments in the lab, and then they come out with this fact, yes, this is the outcome. So likewise, we need to have some practical demonstration of the spiritual life that we all follow. If we do not have that practical demonstration, that means there is some problem. Either we have not understood things properly, or we do not want to apply those things in our day-to-day life. So this is a theme of Shloka 7, 8 and 9, that this material world is working on the principle of duality. Everything has its own extreme, but we ultimately have to transcend ourselves from this principle of duality, and we have to live a life free from duality by gradually cultivating our consciousness in a direction that we are not the body. We have to get rid of this bodily conception of life. Now we will quickly talk about Shloka 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 and 15. Just very quick review considering the time. So now we are talking about some of the important key aspects of the eightfold yoga system. What are the essential prerequisites if someone is really willing to follow this yoga practice? First, one must live in a secluded place. Shloka 10 talks about it. Ekaki. One has to learn the art of living in a secluded place. It is very difficult. If you are living in the city life, then it is almost impossible. Then aparigraha. That means, one must be free from the desire of, feelings and possessiveness. Don't expect that people will come and people will help you. You are alone in this journey. You are under seclusion. You don't meet people. Then, Atma Vishuddhaye, there is a word used in this, next shlokas. So yoga, basically, the Atma Vishuddhaye, yoga is meant to purify us, purify Atma. When we use this term Atma, this Atma has different meaning under different situations. So Atma can be even used for the body, the Atma can be used for the mind, and the same Atma can be used even for the soul, body, mind and soul. So we are existing in this world to purify our body, mind and soul, everything. So what does this Shloka 11, 12, 13, 14, 15 says? So one is about the sitting posture. When we are talking about eightfold yoga system, of how it has to be practiced, how one should sit, this is first. Then the second is one has to be fearless. Then brahmachari vrata sthita. If someone restrains from the sex life, then one becomes very powerful. Many people are not even aware of it. If you really want to gain a strong, control or a regulated life, then you have to have a control over sex life. So that is why brahmachari vrata sthita, we have to have some regulated sex life. If we cannot have a control altogether on it, we must have a regulated sex life. That is why brahmacharis, their minds are very strong, because they follow this, they take this vow of celibacy. This is what can help us to transcend this material world. Then concentration of the mind on Vishnu. So when you follow all these things, when you have a specific sitting posture, you go to a secluded place, then you start meditating on the tip of the nose, and then you meditate on Vishnu Tattva within your heart. All these conditions have been prescribed for practicing the eightfold yoga system. We'll talk about it in detail further. Now it has some limitations. Practically, as most of us are living in the cities, and it is almost impossible for all of us to live a family life. So what we should do, the best for us is that we practice this path of Krishna consciousness, And Krishna consciousness is one of the best and the practical meditation when we can engage ourselves 24 hours a day. How? Very simple example, if you are going to market, then you buy different groceries. When you buy different groceries, you think, okay, I am buying this fruits, I will offer it to Krishna, then I will eat it. Okay, fine. So I have engaged that this is meant for Krishna's enjoyment. When I go to a beautiful garden, when I look at a nice flower, then I know, okay, this is meant to offer to Krishna. It can be used for making nice garlands. So that is how a devotee practically thinks all the time, how he or she can engage his mind in Krishna consciousness. This is the training, and this training is very practical. It can be applied by anyone in any situation of life by engaging in all the different objects of this world and not just simply renouncing the objects of this world. So this is the theme of today. So 4 things that we discuss, beginning with the who is a true yogi. Krishna mentioned it in shloka 1 and 2. What are the essential prerequisites? We talked about it briefly. Then we talked about how our mind can be a friend and how the same mind can be our enemy also. Then third aspect, we talked about the principle of duality. We all have to learn to transcend this principle of duality from our life. And the last is we discussed about what are the key parameters or the qualifications of one who is willing to practice this eightfold yoga system. So it has been referred in shloka 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 and 15. We'll continue our discussion on chapter 6 beginning from shloka 16. I thank all of you for joining this session and look forward to see you again on the next weekend. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Srimad Bhagavad Gita ki jai. Jagat Guru Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Hare Krishna.